going on, internet? Today we are going to change the spark plugs on the ZX10. So if you want to see that, stick around. If anybody knows where I can get a full shop service manual for, I think this is a Gen 4. It's a 2015 model. I believe that's a Gen 4's. I have struggled to even find places that sell it, let alone have them in stock. All I've got to go on is this owner's manual. And you know, if you want to judge something by size, it's gonna be fine for spark plugs. But I've got other work that I need to do. I need to put new fork seals in the bike, change the oil, fork oil. And these forks, these Shawa forks, are different than my KYB forks, different than the standard forks on the Gixxer. They're a little bit different. I found a great video and I'm just gonna have to go by that. I think it'll be okay. There are different special tools that you need. They're just different. It'd be nice to have a legit service manual, not the owner's manual, but at any rate, moving on. Drop a comment, hit me a DM on the socials. Let me know if somebody knows where I can find a full up service manual for this bike. Again, 2015 model, Gen 4, ZX10R. Okay, I found this to be interesting. Spark plugs replace every 7,500 miles. Went past that just a little bit, like another 12,000 miles. A little bit more than double. If you're wondering what the little E in parentheses mean, or if you look up to the line above spark plug replace, rubber parts of master cylinder and caliper, which I'm going to talk more about that because I found that pretty interesting that they want to do that every 40 years. But the uppercase K means that they recommend that you do this at a dealership. And then the E in parentheses, that means it has something to do with the environmental system. So in order to change the plugs, we got to take off the passenger seat. We need to take off the top piece of the rear fairing, the rider seat, and then this cover here, these two side covers, one on each side, and then this top cover. It's all plastic. Once we've taken all that off, we can lift the tank up, and that will give us access to the airbox. And then somewhere underneath the airbox, somewhere around the head of the engine, should be some spark plugs. We'll pull those out, put the new ones in. Shouldn't be too hard. All right, we've got both side covers off. Be careful because this screw, bolt, and this one here are pretty close to the same size, but one is actually a little bit smaller than the other, and they're easy to just get mixed up. And these ones are small enough to the point where they won't thread in here, and you'll just be sitting there just spinning the bolt going, why isn't this working? Well, it's because it's got the wrong one. So make sure to keep these separate because they can easily get mixed up. All right, we've got all the plastic covers off, this top cover, the side covers, seats, etc. We've got the bolts for the tank loosened up. So now we can lift the tank up pretty high and we can see the airbox. And now we can take the airbox. Here's where I wish I had a service manual, but we don't, so we soldier on. But next we take off the airbox, which should gain us access to the valve cover, which should have some spark plugs in it. And then we'll be good. We'll be good. If we can get that far without breaking stuff, we'll be all right. All right, I opted to take the gas tank off, and I'll show you why I did that originally. I thought I would get enough clearance with the tank just being propped up. We could get this airbox off, but we took it off. We took the tank off. It's actually pretty easy to take off. We've got two bolts here. This is where the hinge actually bolts up. You have your fuel pump electrical connection, and then your fuel line. These little clips are pretty easy to work with. You just got a tab on this side, one on this side. You push up, pops off. There's a tab in here for this electrical connection. So the tank comes off really, really super easy. The reason why I chose to take the gas tank off was these clamp bolts. One right here, it's an Allen head, and then one right here. These are the clamp bolts that clamp the airbox to the throttle bodies. That's the word I was looking for. These are really hard to get at. I tried using a universal joint with an Allen socket. There just wasn't enough room, and and my big claws, my sausage hands, they were not gonna fit in there. So long story short, we opted to take the tank off simply to get more room to get at those clamp bolts, and ended up just using a regular old Allen key. And they're not on very tight. It took a little bit because you don't have a lot of room to turn and rotate the Allen key. So it took a little bit. That was a pain in the butt, I will admit. I don't know that it would have been any better for Kawasaki to reverse those so that the heads of the Allen bolts were on the outsides. I don't know. It is what it is. So that's why I took the tank off. Tank comes off super easy. Once you get past those Allen bolts for the Airbox clamps, the rest of it's pretty simple. So let me show you that real quick. So you're gonna pop this off. You've got to take this top fuel rail. So you've got two sets of injectors. A lot of people might not realize this, but you have these injectors. These are like secondary injectors. Actually inject fuel into the airbox. Your primary injectors are underneath the airbox, and they are wired right into the throttle bodies. So that fuel rail right there, that T, is your fuel rail, and your primary injectors come right off of that into the throttle bodies. So you've got actually 2 fuel injectors per cylinder. 4 up here, 4 down there. We don't need to mess with the ones down there. But we do need to take off the fuel rail. It's pretty easy. I've already done it. I chose to just take off the whole rail. You could pop off this fuel line right here and then pop off each electrical connector. But it's pretty easy to just take off the rail. There's 4 bolts here. And then to pull the rail out of the airbox, you just need to apply like even, steady pressure. Not a lot of pressure, just constant pressure. And it just slowly starts to slide up, and then they come out. It's pretty easy. So that comes off pretty easy. There's a hose right here. There's no clamp on the hose. The hose was just hooked up to the airbox right there. And then there's a bolt in here. Move this shit out the way. Bolt right there for the airbox. I ended up taking these 2 bolts out here because this mount for the electronic steering dampener kind of made access to the bolt difficult. So to get a little bit more clearance, I took these 2 bolts out here, move this guy up, and then I've got nice clean access to that bolt to get the airbox off. And then to get the airbox actually off of the throttle bodies, I took a screwdriver and just applied, again, not a lot of pressure, but steady, constant pressure, and it just slowly starts to slide up and they pop off. So the airbox is ready to come off. That's it.
Okay, so I lied, actually. There's 2 more hoses near the front that I just discovered as I was trying to pull off the airbox. There's a pretty large diameter black hose, and then a kind of a clear, much smaller diameter hose to the left of that one as you're sitting on the bike. So got to pull those off too.
All right, so here's the inside of the top of the airbox, and you can see the 4 holes for the secondary injectors that sit up here. Remember, we took that whole fuel rail off? Those guys right there. Those injectors squirt from the top down right into the throttle bodies through these velocity stacks up here. So that's kind of cool to see it apart. And in addition, we've got a couple of connectors that we need to take off right here so that we can get the bottom of the airbox out. And that needs to be cleaned out. So it's a good thing we're actually taking this bike off so we can do a proper clean on the inside of the bottom of the airbox.
All right, now that we got those 2 hidden hoses disconnected from the bottom of the airbox, and we've got our 2 electrical connections on the front right-hand side of the bike disconnected, we can just pull the bottom of the airbox right off, and that will give us access to the spark plugs, and we can just start pulling off the coils off the top of the plugs and start wrenching away and get those old plugs out of there. You're going to need at least 1 universal joint. The number 1 and number 4 cylinders are so close to the frame that you do not have a straight shot to the top of the plug. So you got to come in at an angle and you need at least one universal joint. I only had one. I was able to get it to work. I had to use a different combination length of extensions for the 1 and number 4 cylinders, and I did the number 2 and 3 cylinders. Here I'm on number 2 cylinder, and I've got a really long extension. You have a fairly straight shot, but even with the number 2 and 3 cylinders, it was still easier with the universal joint. So if you've got 2 universal joints, that would be ideal for the number 1 and 4 cylinders, but you can get by with 1. I was able to make it work.
All right, we got all the plugs gapped, the new plugs gapped, and put into the engine. Show you that here in a second. You know, I don't want to say never, but I rarely ever have to gap new plugs. They always seem to come right out of the box in the range. For this bike, I think it's 31 thousandths to 35 thousandths. So I gapped them all at 34. Interestingly enough, I checked the gap of the plugs, the old plugs I pulled out of the motor, and they were gapped like right outside of spec, like 31 thousandths to 35 thousandths. 34 thousandths went right through them, like no resistance at all. So I don't know if that's because I went way past the service limit on them and the gap expanded over time. I don't know. But new plugs gapped, installed. Let me show you that real quick. Here are the, gosh, can I talk a little slower? Here are the plug caps and coils. There's 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one's kind of hidden through these wires right here. But I'll tell you what, man, there is no shortage of hoses and electrical connections all over this damn motorcycle. Once you pull the airbox off, holy smokes, there's all kinds of hoses and electrical connections. And this I found interesting. So this is a Gen4 2015, and it does not have ride-by-wire. You can see the throttle cables right here. They are directly connected to your wrist, okay? Turning those so you can see the butterflies inside turning, but there's a second set of butterflies right here, and I don't want to move them too much because I believe that this is the servo motor that operates these butterflies right here. And so I'm guessing, I don't know, this is complete 100% guess, but I think this is how they do the power modes. So this doesn't have ride-by-wire, but it does have 3 power modes, selectable power modes, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 3. And I'm willing to bet that this has a play into that. So yeah, if you want to restrict the power, cut off some air. And that's what these butterflies would do. And it may be used for something else too. I don't know. It could be part of the emissions as well, but I found it interesting. You know, if you're going to change your plugs yourself, you might as well clean out your airbox. Obviously, we cleaned out the air filter as part of just our fall, springtime maintenance. So that's been washed, re-oiled, but we also cleaned out the inside so the air flows through here, and then the filter sits right up here. Clean air comes out the other side, down through your velocity stacks, through 2 sets of butterflies, now that I know that. I have not put on the side panels, so this guy actually mounts to the side panel, so we just got it sitting right here. But we do have the airbox back in. We can lift the tank up. We've got the fuel rail. It's hard to see, but the fuel rail is back in. The bolts for the electronic steering dampener and that 1 bolt down there for the airbox in. So I'm kind of confident we won't have any issues, but I'm not 100% confident, which is why I left all of the airbox bolts out. And the gas tank bolts go right here. So we just put the hinge back on. There's the 2 bolts and hooked up the fuel pump. So the last thing that we want to do is, before we put it all together, is fire it up, turn the key on, let the pump come on, pressurize the fuel system, check for leaks, run the engine, make sure we don't have any codes coming up on the dash, make sure the engine's running right. If we forgot to plug something up, or if we missed a hose or something along those lines, then it'll manifest itself in a poorly running engine or some kind of code on the dash. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, key is in the on position. We heard the fuel pump kick in. I'm just gonna do a real quick visual for leaks. You know, we only took the fuel line to the pump off, but we did move around the fuel rail because we took that off of the top of the airbox. So, you know, I don't expect any issues, but pretty easy to just lift the tank up and check real quick just to make sure. So let's fire it up. Right, we don't have any leaks that I can see. No engine codes. Engine sounds good. Engine sounds fabulous, actually. I'm done, man. I'm gonna go ahead and put side covers on, put the seats back on, button everything up, and call it a video. Look, this is pretty easy, I think, for the most part. There's some tight sections where big sausage hands are hard to fit in, but the reality is, I think I probably have, I don't know, maybe 4 hours into this, and you got to take into consideration making a video. It just adds tons of overhead, setting up cameras and lighting, doing retakes because I can't really talk English very good, and everything just takes longer when you don't have a service manual. You're trying to make a video and you're just like figuring things out on, you know, your first go around. So all that said, I think the real, see, English, hard in front of cameras. The reality is, I think that this is really just like about a 3 hours tops job. You could start this in the morning and be riding by lunchtime. There's no special tools that you need. I guess the closest thing to a special tool would be this spark plug. Come on, camera. There, you can do it. Figure it out. There it is. My spark plug gapper tool. So use that to check your gaps, and then it's got some ends on it that you can use to adjust the gap. Come on, camera. Come on, camera. Yeah, screw it. Yeah, so that's pretty much the only special tool. I've got a magnet. You get a magnet that telescopes. Those are always handy in case you drop something somewhere. But yeah, the rest of these tools are just standard tools: Allen keys, ratchet sockets, universal joints. No special tools. So this is a pretty easy job. And at least with this special tool, the spark plug gap thing, you can pick that up at pretty much anywhere that has a tool section. So it's not like you have to order any fancy dancy special tools from the factory that cost you gazillions of dollars, or whatever. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Keep the rubber side down, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.